Hey guys, tonight we dive into something that sounds like a soap opera, but hits closer to real life than you'd ever want. Imagine soft lamp glow on a quiet evening, the hum of your fan brushing against your skin, and then finding out that the two people closest to you, your wife and your brother, have created a secret life behind your back. You probably won't survive this one emotionally, but we're easing into it gently. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're all listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It starts with little things. You wake up at 2:14 a.m. because the bed feels cold. Again, she's not there. She says she was in the living room, just couldn't sleep. You believe her, sort of. Then it's the locked phone, the barely concealed texts, the times your brother swings by with a weird smirk and leaves just before your wife gets home. You tell yourself it's nothing. Families have rhythms, right? Maybe you're just being paranoid. But still, something pulses under the surface like tension in a Renaissance painting. Everyone's smiling, but the eyes give it away. Historians still argue whether Da Vinci's Last Supper hints at betrayal in Judas's placement, or if we're just reading too much into angles and shadows. One night, you find yourself Googling signs your partner is cheating, like a character in a cliché. But the results feel too familiar. A fun tidbit? In ancient Egypt, women used garlic or onion placed, well, internally as a primitive pregnancy test. If they started smelling it through their mouths, they were considered pregnant. Not very romantic, not very accurate either. But still, the gut knows. Yours does too. You weren't snooping. At least, that's what you keep telling yourself. The drawer wasn't even locked, just barely wedged shut like it didn't want to be discovered, but also kind of did. Inside, wedged between old receipts and warranty booklets, sits an envelope. No name, no stamp, just heavy. You almost don't open it. You almost put it back, tell yourself it's private. But your fingers betray you. And once you slide out the crisp folded paper and see the words paternity confirmation, your breath catches like a stone in your chest. Your brother's name. Your wife's name. A baby. And then just like that, the ground under your life starts shifting. Historians still argue whether the collapse of ancient Rome was due to internal corruption, overexpansion, or sheer bad luck. But standing in your living room, staring at DNA results like they're written in fire, you understand how a whole empire can crumble overnight. Your first thought isn't even rage, it's numbness. Then embarrassment. You feel like the guy in the crowd who's clapping off beat, the one everyone knows is out of the loop. You suddenly remember that weird baby shower you were barely invited to. The offhand comment your mom made, "Family takes care of its own," echoes with new, acidic meaning. The ink on the paper might as well scream. Your brother, the guy you shared a bunk bed with, who taught you how to fake a cough to skip school, now has a baby with your wife. Fringe fact: in 17th century England, accusations of adultery were sometimes settled with trial by combat, two people dueling it out in a muddy field to prove their case. Not exactly subtle. You don't want a duel, you want answers. And right now, you don't trust your own voice enough to ask them. The timing is almost theatrical. A few days after the envelope incident, your mom invites everyone over for Sunday dinner, her famous lasagna, the kind that somehow tastes like your entire childhood. You show up out of habit, not hunger, the DNA letter folded tightly in your back pocket like a loaded pistol. Your wife's already there, laughing a little too loudly. Your brother? He greets you like everything's normal, like he hasn't detonated your life from the inside out. You sit down across from them, eye twitching, fingers drumming against the tablecloth. Your mom definitely ironed for hours. The air smells like oregano and tension. You don't make it to dessert. You pull out the letter, flat as judgment, and slide it onto the table like you're playing your final card in a silent game. Everyone goes quiet. Even your uncle stops mid-chew. Your wife blinks like she's buffering. Your brother goes pale. "I found this," you say. No yelling, no drama. Just the truth dropped like a guillotine. The silence afterward is Shakespearean. Remember that? He once wrote that truth will out, and historians still argue whether he believed in moral justice or just liked chaos. You're voting chaos. Your wife tries to explain, but all the words come out soft and wet. Excuses dressed as apologies. She says it just happened. Your brother says it was a mistake. Your mom puts her fork down like it's the most tragic thing that's ever happened to her silverware. And you? You sit there with a lasagna you can't eat and a family you no longer recognize. Somewhere deep inside, something ancient snaps, like a Roman aqueduct giving out under centuries of pressure. You don't raise your voice, you just get up. Because the table may be full, but you're suddenly very, very alone. You should have seen it coming. But nothing really prepares you for the moment your wife tells you, with a straight face, that the baby is still yours. Not biologically, no, but emotionally, spiritually. Because you were meant to be the dad. She says it like it's noble, like she's doing you a favor. She says it while bouncing the baby on her knee, calling him our little blessing. You blink. Once. Twice. Pretty sure a blood vessel in your temple does a tiny drum roll. Apparently you were just supposed to step in. To raise the child. To be the man your brother couldn't be. He's not responsible enough, she says. He's just not ready. But you? You're stable. Reliable. A placeholder with a heartbeat. You remember how Augustus Caesar positioned himself as the father of the nation after Julius Caesar's assassination. Technically not the biological heir, but still the one who claimed the throne. Historians still argue whether he manipulated his way into power or simply stepped up when no one else could. You're not sure which is worse, being a puppet or being Augustus. Meanwhile, your wife is busy romanticizing betrayal. She says family is complicated, as if that's supposed to stitch the wound shut. And your brother? He's ghosting the whole situation, vanishing into the background like an unpaid intern who forgot it was picture day. The baby cries, your wife coos, and you just stand there, realizing that even the sound of a newborn can feel like betrayal when it isn't yours, but was meant to be. You weren't supposed to know. You were supposed to smile, sign papers, take pictures, be the good guy, the fool. But that mask doesn't fit anymore. Your mother calls the next morning. No hello, just a sigh that sounds like it's been aging in a wine cellar for decades. We need to talk, she says. And you know you're not walking into a conversation. You're walking into a verdict. You meet at her house, the same place you used to sneak Pop-Tarts in the middle of the night as a kid. But now it smells like cinnamon and passive aggression. She's already seated, teacup in hand, as if she's the queen of guilt herself. She doesn't deny anything. That's the worst part. She knew. She says she was hoping it would blow over, like your entire life was a weather system she could outwait. Your brother's fragile, she says, and she was lonely. It wasn't ideal, but things happen. You realize then that your role has always been clear, the fixer, the dependable one, the family's personal Roomba, quiet, consistent, and always cleaning up other people's messes. She tells you to be the bigger man, to help raise the baby, keep the family intact, because that child didn't ask to be born. A classic appeal to innocence, used since the days of Sparta, when unwanted babies were sometimes left on hillsides because perfection was prized above all. Historians still argue whether it was purely eugenics or simply survival in a brutal world. Then she hits you with it. This is your chance to prove your love to the family. You just stare. Because love doesn't look like betrayal, it doesn't sound like silence, and it sure as hell doesn't mean signing up to raise a child born from lies. She's protecting the golden boy. Your brother. And you? You're the insurance policy. You finally say the word out loud. No. Not a shout, not a scream. Just a quiet, full-stop no that lands harder than a cannonball in a glass house. Your mom flinches like you slapped her. Your refusal echoes in that too-clean kitchen with the fake fruit bowl and judgmental wallpaper. She stares at you like you've just confessed to a felony. You're really going to do this? She whispers, blinking like she's trying to force tears out of dry ducts. To us? as if the betrayal wasn't theirs, but the refusal to go along with it somehow is. You walk out, and walking out feels illegal, like you've broken some invisible law that says sacrifice yourself for family at all costs, but for once you're not in the mood to be a martyr. The backlash starts instantly. Your wife texts, then calls, then shows up at your door with red eyes and emotional monologues that would make Greek tragedies blush. Your brother? Radio silence. Classic. And your mom? She doesn't stew quietly, she plots. Funny fact. In 15th century France, there was a law that let men annul their marriages if they couldn't perform their marital duties in court, literally had to prove it, with witnesses. Historians still argue whether it was about justice or humiliation. This feels similar. Not a legal trial, but a family one. And you? You're on the stand. Relatives start weighing in. He's just a baby. Don't punish the child. Blood is thicker. You realize blood's only thick when it benefits them. You say no again. And again. And with every repetition, your spine straightens just a little more. You're not a monster. You're just done being the doormat in a house full of muddy shoes. They don't take rejection well. The next blow comes fast and public. You're at work, sipping your terrible office coffee, trying to pretend spreadsheets are more important than betrayal, when you hear a commotion near the front desk. Then you see her, your mom, in her nice blouse, the one she wears to church and interventions. She's yelling your name across the open office, and suddenly, everyone's eyes are flicking between her and you like they're watching the worst reality show ever invented. She marches up, purse swinging like a mace, and starts screaming that you're tearing this family apart, that you're abandoning a baby, that you're choosing ego over responsibility. And you just stand there like a Victorian painting, stoic, stunned, vaguely embarrassed by the lighting. She says you owe it to your wife, to your brother, to her, that this child is a blessing, and you're letting pride destroy everything, which would be poetic if it weren't completely bonkers. You glance around. Your coworkers are pretending not to watch, but you know tomorrow's break-room gossip is already writing itself. One guy even leans back in his chair like it's popcorn time. Fringe fact. In ancient Mesopotamia, public shaming was sometimes used instead of imprisonment. Thieves were marched through town with signs announcing their crimes. Historians still argue whether it was effective rehabilitation or just early reality TV. Your mom, apparently, is a Mesopotamian traditionalist. You ask her to leave. Quietly, firmly, she refuses. Security escorts her out. And even as the doors close behind her, she's still shouting about how you're ruining the baby's future. You return to your desk, face hot, hands trembling. You didn't start this fire. But suddenly, everyone's acting like you're the one holding the match. You wish it ended at the office? It doesn't. That public outburst? It's just the first domino in a whole parade of nonsense. Over the next few days, your phone turns into a hotline for guilt trips and emotional landmines. Your aunt calls sobbing. Your cousin sends you a long, dramatic text about quote, breaking generational cycles. Even your old piano teacher chimes in, like this betrayal somehow echoes through time and Middle C. Your mom's clearly rallying the troops. It's not just pressure, it's a full-blown propaganda campaign. She's out here spinning betrayal into legacy, rewriting history faster than you can hit block. The story she's telling? You're the selfish one, the one who walked away from family, from duty, from love. But the thing is, love isn't a leash. You start noticing how people look at you differently. Even your neighbors give you those sympathetic half-smiles, like you've been diagnosed with a rare social disease, the guy who couldn't forgive. Fringe tidbit? In medieval Japan, samurai who failed their lords were sometimes forced into seppuku, ritual suicide, to reclaim honor. Historians still argue whether it was bravery or peer pressure with a sword. Right now, it feels like your family wants emotional seppuku. They want you to give up your boundaries to restore their narrative. You're not allowed to be angry. Just noble, quiet, useful. But instead of folding, you start journaling. Petty? Maybe, but necessary. You begin chronicling every interaction, every lie, every manipulation you're not going to forget. Because gaslighting only works when you don't have receipts. It's odd how clarity feels like betrayal to those still living in denial. But you've traded illusion for oxygen. And even though the air up here is cold, at least it's clean. You decide it's time to confront your wife again. This time, no letters, no silent accusations. Just you, sitting across from her in the dim kitchen light, the baby asleep in his crib nearby. You don't want to yell. You want to understand, maybe to find some shard of truth buried beneath the layers of lies. She tells you things you weren't ready to hear. How loneliness crept in like a slow fog. How your brother's attention felt like a lifeline when you were distant, busy, emotionally checked out. How she felt trapped in a marriage that wasn't what she dreamed. It's messy, heartbreaking. You remember how Cleopatra and Mark Antony's relationship was both political and personal, full of passion, betrayal, and power plays. Historians still argue how much was love and how much was strategy. Your wife isn't Cleopatra. She's just someone who made terrible choices, hoping love could fix the cracks she ignored. You admit, quietly, that maybe you weren't as present as you thought. Maybe the emotional distance created a space where mistakes grew like weeds. But you also realize this isn't about blame anymore. It's about what comes next. The baby, your brother, your family, all tangled in a web that won't unravel easily. You tell her you can't pretend anymore. That your refusal isn't cruelty, but self-preservation. That love without trust is just a story waiting to end badly. And as she listens, tears streaming, you understand something. Sometimes the hardest love is the kind that lets go. The fallout is slow, like a winter morning creeping over frost-covered fields. Your family fractures in quiet, painful ways. Conversations become text messages. Phone calls shrink to nods and sighs. Your mom's visits turn into long, uncomfortable silences where everyone's pretending nothing has exploded. You find yourself alone more often, but not lonely. There's a strange peace in cutting ties with chaos, even if it's your own blood. It reminds you of Viking exiles, those banished to harsh lands to fend for themselves. Historians still argue whether exile was punishment or opportunity. You start rebuilding on your own terms. Maybe it's small things. Making your own meals, rediscovering hobbies you'd abandoned, filling your apartment with silence instead of arguments. You learn that healing isn't about forgetting the past, but learning to live with it. Sometimes you picture your little nephew, his eyes curious, innocent, unaware of the storm around him. You don't know what role you'll play in his life. Maybe none. Maybe as a distant relative who wishes things had been different. And that's okay, because you're learning that family isn't always who shares your blood. It's who respects your boundaries, who stands by your truth, even when it's uncomfortable. And right now, your truth is enough. Word count 322. Now, as the night deepens and your mind slows, imagine yourself in a quiet room with soft shadows, the kind where even your breath feels like a secret. You're safe here, away from the noise of judgment and heartbreak. The past might be tangled, a knot of emotions and memories that don't always make sense. But the future, that's a blank page, waiting for your pen. Whatever happened, whatever was lost or broken, you still have yourself. And sometimes, that's the greatest gift. So breathe in slowly, let your shoulders relax, feel the calm wrap around you like a warm blanket. Tomorrow is another day, another chance to rewrite the story in your own words. For now, rest. You're doing better than you think. Sleep well.